Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast, where every week Danny and Maura Vega discuss topics that help families live a healthy and active lifestyle with their little ones, including nutrition and training, peaceful parenting, education, and mindset. To stay up to date, make sure to hit subscribe on this podcast and check out the blog at www.fatfueled.family. You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram at DannyVega.ms, at FatFueledMom, and at FatFueledKids, and Fat Fueled Family on YouTube. Enjoy the show.
Hey guys, we want to take a minute to talk about a revolutionary idea that our friends shared with us in February that has completely changed our lives. For those of you who know us well or have been listening to us for a while, you know how much we love to travel. Imagine having a VIP 4 to 5 star travel experience at 2 to 3 star prices. Imagine getting paid to travel. Well, all of these things have now become our reality, and we can't not share it with our listeners. Now that we know what we know, we will never pay full price on travel ever again. If you're interested in joining us and millions of other people who have been traveling the world and living their dreams, just email us at hello@fatfueled.family for more info.
Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Vega, and I'm joined by my
What's my
wife.
adjective today?
Listen, you are the happiest I've seen
Yeah, I
you.
went to the gym. I don't understand why it's so hard to understand this.
I know it's not hard to understand.
No, it's not for you.
It's just I'm so happy for you because I know how depressed you've been. No,
I mean
it's
my time.
It's actual.
It's like therapy for me. It's the whole
Don't
thing.
joke because you know it was real depression.
It is.
I want people to
100%.
not think that my wife was just mad because she couldn't go to the gym and she's some spoiled person. It's because this is the best way for her over years and years and years to manage her stress, to just, I mean, it's night and day, my love, literally 2 days. And it's crazy. It's crazy, the difference. So
I tell people for weeks.
I know. Well, listen, I've been right there with you, just defending you. We've lost hundreds of followers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, upset,
and it's fine. It's look, someone who was struggling like you were appreciated what we've said. So anyways, we don't want to keep our guest waiting because she's right here and we've just spoken with her for the last 10 minutes. She's been a delight. We want to introduce you to Dr. Anna Cabeca. She's an internationally acclaimed menopause and sexual health expert, global speaker, and pioneering promoter of women's health, and she's lovingly known as the Girlfriend Doctor. Dr. Cabeca is Emory University trained and triple board certified in gynecology and obstetrics, in integrative medicine and anti-aging and regenerative medicine, and is the author of best-selling book, The Hormone Fix, a diet and holistic lifestyle program for menopausal women, and new release, Keto Green 16, designed for improving energy, hormones, and rapid weight loss. Dr. Cabeca has reached hundreds of thousands of women around the globe, inspiring them to reclaim their optimal health and realize they can journey through menopause and find more purpose and pleasure than they ever dreamed possible. She's the recipient of the Impact Award for Innovation from the 2018 Mindshare Summit, and she also received the 2017 Alan P. Mintz Award for Clinical Excellence in Age Management Medicine. Welcome to the show, Dr. Cabeca. How are you?
It is great to be here with you. I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
We're honored to talk with you. We love women's health. I mean,
we've been wanting to get you on for a while.
Into women's health, so
it's perfect.
It's great to have you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and then I learned that secret part that you were a medical device rep for a while for women's health, and
yes,
that's the inside back door of the gynecology's office.
Oh yeah, he knows he's got the inside scoop. It's so funny you say that because for the longest time,
Oh, yeah.
all of my friends, they know this about Danny. And I've known Danny since I was in my early 20s, all my friends, whenever they had a question about their cycle, about birth control, it was like, hey, Maura, can you ask Danny this? And I'm like, guys.
I'm not a doctor, guys. I mean, I'll tell you what I think.
But you would always know about birth control and stuff like
Yeah,
that. You would always so it's just so funny. Oh, man. Well, we always lead off with the question, what is the most critical problem that you are currently trying to solve?
I think it really comes to future telling, for the school year, right? We've homeschooled this year. We don't know what's happening next year. I'm deciding whether to put my daughter back into school or to keep her on the road with me or hopefully on the road and do some traveling and visiting and continue her homeschooling virtually. So I think like right now, critically thinking, what's the best decision for my family and my youngest, who's 12, and I have a 21, a soon to be 24, and a 31-year-old. So we have a wide range, and they're all doing good, working in the business and studying. So that's good. But the 12-year-old, I think that's my issue right now is, what would be the next right step as a family and in her education with such a changing landscape?
Yeah. Different world, lots of factors to consider. My gosh.
But it's also like giving parents a little taste of like maybe that possibility, that if you were thinking of doing something like that, like maybe I can do that, maybe for a year, you know what I mean? Maybe she can choose to go to high school, I guess it depends, but yeah, 12 that's middle school.
We're biased, but let me tell you, rough. We think that 12, we have a very strong opinion about 12. 12 is a magical age.
Yeah, it is.
It was Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Edison both had businesses at 12.
Yeah, they did.
And we just, we always talk about this, with kids. I feel like I'm stealing your thunder talking about this because you talk about it all the time. With kids, we've extended their childhood so much because of school.
With school, yeah.
And this lack of freedom and this lack of the ability to express creativity and to just find how to spend your time and create things, I think is part of the reason why kids are 18 years old and the only thing they're considering is a major. They're not thinking about who they are, what they love. And so it's just a magical age. So we love that age.
Yeah. I think it is a magical age. A lot of development you can see happen, especially in the experience, because I homeschooled for a short amount of time and then they've been in private schools, or regular schools. Yeah. And what you see is their character develop, what they naturally have an affinity for, what they like, what they're called to, and what lights them up. You can see that a lot more in this freedom. So I'm hoping parents that are at home with kids right now are seeing like the uniqueness of their children as well, because that's definitely a gift during this situation to be able to see that.
For sure.
And my 12-year-old, she's had for the last 7-8 months a Poshmark account. Have you heard of that?
Oh, that's awesome.
You have
I have that.
So she is photographing. She is
selling her stuff.
She is totally. I'm like, wait, did I just get you that? No.
Little entrepreneur.
I love that. I know she's like, gonna sell my stuff, make some money.
That's right.
I love that. I was thinking about something as you were talking about that. Oh yeah, Desmond, our 9-year-old. I mean, he just is learning so many things, and it's like it seems like now it's picking up even more, like the speed at which he learns things. Because a lot of the time we were talking about this before we got on the air, how we homeschool, we're unschoolers, so we're less like we just kind of give them more freedom, and we believe learning is a natural thing. And so as it was, we were kind of giving him a lot of freedom. But now, since we're at home and we don't have those resources, a lot of the time we have to record podcasts. We have to do things in here. So he's on his own, and he's just continues to pick up new skills.
Picks up all these crazy
origami,
skills.
Beatboxing. I mean, those are the two big ones.
Yeah, huge. He's gotten so
beatboxing is crazy.
Desmond during quarantine became like a pro beatboxer.
Yeah. It's been amazing.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So
I love it. It's awesome. Yeah,
definitely one of the brighter spots, one of the more positive things that's come out of this. But I want to talk about this because this is a great place to start given our current situation with the pandemic. It's this subject of resilience versus vulnerability. And I know you've written and spoken about, neuroendocrine vulnerability. And this topic fascinates me. And I think a lot of our listeners may still not be aware of the connection between the gut and our immune system and the HPA axis and our mental health, for example. And it's crazy to think how relevant all of this is right now. So can you explain, what is neuroendocrine vulnerability, and then talk about how we can become more resilient in all of those areas?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is really a passionate area for me because of my own personal journey and, what I had suffered. Part of my research has then been trying to understand the trauma, the experience of trauma and post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic growth or post-traumatic resilience. Wow. And And I love that because it does, what makes some of us succeed, grow, move forward, and what makes others really stay in a hibernated state or a cocoon or really struggle, like never be able to, smile, laugh, and experience joy, and what that difference is and why it's different at different times of our life. So for women, typically age 35 to 55, enter because of hormonal shifts, this period of what I call neuroendocrine vulnerability, where we start to experience these symptoms: anxiety, mood swings, waking up in the middle of the night, insomnia, loss of sex drive, and irritability, depression. And these symptoms, those are all neurologic symptoms, right? But there's an endocrinologic component as well, and that is because our hormones shifting. What do we experience as women? Breakthrough bleeding, regular cycles, worsening PMS, and heavier than usual periods. And so all of these gynecologic symptoms can occur with the same time as the neurologic symptoms. But in standard gynecology, we just treat those symptoms. Well, here's the birth control pill. Here's Prozac. Well, let's do an ablation. Okay, none of that's quite satisfactory. Let's do a hysterectomy. But at the same time, we're like, okay, here's some Prozac for the anxiety and depression, and let's add on some Wellbutrin or Buspar, whatever the next medication is. And, and what's the end result? The end result is typically, well, we've done everything we can as a gynecologist, but here is a great psychiatrist and divorce attorney. Let me refer.
Right? My goodness.
Yeah. And so
that's
it's
a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff, but what's happening? So I understand, like, there's the hormonal shift, but now how is that affecting our neurotransmitters? Certainly estrogen, we need estrogen for adequate serotonin. We need testosterone for adequate dopamine. We need progesterone for adequate GABA, which is our relaxation hormone. I always say, if you ever watch the musical Mamma Mia, great musical, right? It's like in the rock group ABBA, the music in there is fabulous. So my gosh. Fabulous. So that's how I think of GABA. That gives you that feeling that,
that's genius. Like GABA, ABBA.
Yes, exactly. And that kind of feel. Mm-hmm. And when this is happening, what's also happening is our brain's ability to use glucose as fuel is decreasing, because as estrogen and most likely as progesterone levels are declining, which is the precursor hormone to all of these other sex steroids, as these hormones are declining, our brain's ability to use glucose is also declining, because glucose utilization in the brain, or gluconeogenesis in the brain, is estrogen dependent. We know that. But the curve, when we look at studies now looking at brain function, it follows the same decline as progesterone. So I think progesterone's the unspoken hormone, or kind of like, culprit in this situation. And so what we do know, and this is why I love what you guys do, and I'm a big advocate of keto, is that ketone usage is not hormone dependent. So when we switch into ketosis, we alleviate these symptoms. And so we're creating a really strong resilience here too at the physiological level, because we're not relying on that ebb and flow of glucose as fuel too. And especially when this hormone vulnerability is happening.
That's amazing with the ketones. I didn't think of that. It is true. It's kind of like all of these things could be going wrong. You could have some insulin, resistance in the brain, but ketones can just come right in and fix that. I've thought about it for other areas, just not with hormones. Now, you did mention, we know that progesterone is very important with this. Usually it's low progesterone, and sometimes probably estrogen dominance at the same time. And one of the things that I thought about when you mentioned that age, that 35 to 55, was the first is the decline in testosterone. So is the progesterone decrease what is kind of like leading to a cascade of things that would lead to the testosterone decrease?
Yeah, absolutely. And then DHEA, right? For men and women, DHEA our 20s, and that is a direct precursor to estrogen and testosterone. And I believe too, like testosterone will convert to estrogen. So if we have healthy levels of testosterone, we're going to alleviate a lot of these symptoms as well. But what's really fascinating here too is that as our body's shifting now, just naturally, there's a similar shift that happens like right now, this time of the pandemic, with quarantine and excess cortisol, because cortisol is made from progesterone. So here we're getting the shunting to produce cortisol, and everything is sacrificed, especially our steroids, reproductive hormones, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, all those that naturally support our libido and are anabolic, right, build us back up, are sacrificed while we're pumping out, cortisol. And when we are stressed, whether it is real or perceived, if we're thinking it, if it's on the news, if we're worrying, that's going to increase our cortisol, and that's going to naturally deplete this very neuroprotective hormone, progesterone. So we can experience depression, anxiety a lot earlier. And if we don't nip it in the bud, right? If we don't recognize this and correct it, what happens over the long run is what I call the cortisol oxytocin disconnect. So when cortisol goes up, typically oxytocin goes down. And then when cortisol is up for a long period of time, such as in chronic stress or everyday stress or PTSD, what happens is that the paraventricular nucleus area in the brain will then say, okay, cortisol, you are frying me out. You are breaking me down, frying me out. I'm going to suppress you. So now we get into this adrenal hypofunction mode. So now cortisol's low, you're exhausted, you're burnout, you're on edge, you have no reserve, right? There's no resilience left. And oxytocin is suppressed at the same time. So what that feels like is, look, just leave me alone. Don't talk to me. I don't see you. I don't know you. I don't feel love for you. I'm totally disconnected. It's a very physiologic reality that if I hadn't experienced that myself, I wouldn't have understood this.
Wow. That's exactly right.
Yeah, she knows because we got her tested.
Yeah, I had a feeling, we had gone through, something kind of traumatic with our son.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. He was involved in an accident. I mean, he's fine, but when he was 4 years old, he was literally run over in our neighborhood.
Oh my God.
Plastic surgery on his ear, and just the whole thing of it, just, how that is, like, just even the thought of that happening, like it really just like threw us for a loop. And then we were really busy. And I suspected, I was like, look, I don't know what I feel, but I know for sure that it's stress. And let's get my hormones checked because I've got to see what's going on with the cortisol. And by the time I did it, it was what you were saying. It had flatline. It was nothing. Yeah, I had none. So yeah, that feels pretty terrible. So
interesting that we got the test in November and you didn't take it until like February.
Well, no, because you know how these hormone tests are. There's like, it's got to be like the perfect
cycle
day.
And
it's got to be the right day of the cycle. You can't drink coffee all day. You can't work out. And so for me, I'm it's got to be I can't be like,
well, you also ripped out. Sorry, doctor, this is not,
we do not suggest this.
But, we kind of know what, I've been there. And she, it was perfect time in her cycle. Her cervix was low.
I had a Mirena.
She had a Mirena and she pulled it out.
I was like, Danny, tell me the truth. Can I just pull this thing out? Do I really need to go to the doctor?
I was like, if you could feel it.
He's like, if you could feel it, you could probably just pull it out like a tampon. I'm like, okay, then.
We do not recommend this.
Do not recommend, by the way.
Very responsible.
Go to your doctor.
So yeah,
so so I had a little I did feel like maybe a little crash or something in hormones that first week. After of that first week coming off. So just interesting stuff. Yeah,
but and that cleared out progestin from the Mirena. Yeah,
exactly. We had to wait a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. And thank you for recognizing that, because a lot of people say like, oh, the Mirena, like there's no, the hormones are so low and all of that. But,
I used to say it all the time. I used to tell them, look, it's like it's not systemically absorbed. It's all local. But we see so many symptoms that are. First of all, one of the interesting things that I saw was that something that we don't mention is that in the product, in the insert of Mirena, is that in the first year, 50% of the cycles were ovulatory. That means that 50% of them were not. So if we're saying that it's not systemically absorbed, it's acting locally on the uterus, then why are women not ovulating?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So in the first year when hormones are the highest, then it seems maybe it dropped off, or actually probably were only required to do a year by, you know, the guidelines, and they just studied it for a year. So, you know, I've learned a lot. It was kind of like things that were in front of me when I was the rep.
You know how it is, like you're the rep. So it's like you're...
But you want to think, everyone thinks that they're objective and that they're, you know, ethical. Right. Everyone thinks that. Right. But then when you start to look at it from another point of view, you start to see, oh my gosh, why didn't I see that? You know?
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. Right. And so, I mean, along the same lines, you know, we know that, you know, talking about the virus now, you know, some of the most prevalent comorbidities and the more serious cases of this virus are things like hypertension, blood sugar dysregulation, and of course, diabetes. You know, you have spoken extensively on the role of ketones and our health. Are there any direct or indirect links between higher ketone levels and improved immunity or other areas of health? Or is it more so just like the absence or attenuation of the constant blood sugar swings that can lead to these more serious outcomes with the virus?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think we know. There's a single study so far, like in a rat model, that looked at ketones and improving immunity, but we haven't looked at it in adults. But what we do know, a couple things, you know, and I'm big on Keto Green. It's the combination of alkaline foods with alkaline lifestyle incorporated into healthy ketogenic eating. And so in what we do see with that combination, what we really do see is an improvement in DHEA, you know, and that is a marker of resilience. Anytime we can improve our adrenal hormone, DHEA, and modulate cortisol, reset cortisol, put it so it works for us and not against us, then we're going to improve our immune system. The same thing with insulin sensitivity. And without a doubt, without a question, it's not debatable, getting ketogenic increases insulin sensitivity and will help lower our hemoglobin A1C. But again, not just with ketogenic type foods, with ketogenic lifestyle, exercise, like you just talked about as we started, how, you know, uplifting exercise is, because you're also decreasing cortisol and increasing oxytocin, and also pushing your body into more ketosis. And then intermittent fasting. We know that in and of itself is critical for decreasing our risk of cancer, decreasing inflammation, and improving overall resilience as well. So when I see those things, I always think of resilience in the terms of managing cortisol, but even more so empowering oxytocin. What are the things in our life that give us joy, bring peace, create laughter, ignite pleasure? Everything that increases oxytocin in our life, for sure, is going to increase our resilience. And we know that from war-torn areas. And even, for example, way back, if you look at the research on Chernobyl, after the nuclear disaster, people that stayed in that area, despite the, you know, toxicity of the nuclear waste, actually lived longer than those who had left. And they lived with less comorbidities. And we believe the reason is because familiarity, community, lineage, you know, that staying with your village essentially had elevated levels of oxytocin over high levels of stress from new society, new culture, new stresses, and many other things. Mm-hmm.
You know, that just makes me so sad just thinking about, you know, the children that have been born during this whole thing. I don't know what they're doing, you know, in, you know, postpartum. I don't know what they're doing in the hospitals with the situation, but just in general.
For the most part, it's not horrible. Like, they test the moms, of course, when they come in. But,
but just in general, I
doubt that they're forcing people to wear masks.
People are not hugging. Labor. They're not hugging each other. They're not touching each other. And that is an issue. That is an issue that, you know, the average person, for some reason, and it probably goes back to school, tends to dismiss all of these things that we just know in our hearts. Like our intuition tells us that it's good to hug people and it's good to be with people. And it turns out that tends to increase oxytocin.
Absolutely.
You know? And so many of us are going against our gut and our heart. And hopefully with this, you know, people start to realize that we should follow that gut instinct that we have, you know, that instinct to it's there for a reason. Right. I mean, that's my thought on that. You know,
I agree. And think about cultures, right? So think about in Cuba, and I think about in the Middle East. I mean, you hug, right? You hug and you kiss. We do the cheeks, right? And that's like, you're not shaking hands. You're not risking hand-to-hand contamination of anything. It's almost
it's actually
healthier, better. Right? And then you increase oxytocin. It's like the healthiest way to greet people.
I'm gonna start that.
I know that's so true. Like, guys, you're getting a kiss on the cheek. I can't
shake your hand.
I'll kiss you on the cheek.
Let's hug.
Exactly. And I think, like, you know, that makes a difference, and you're not having that hand-to-hand
That's so true.
transfer. That's so true. That there has to be a reason that this developed over time too.
Yeah.
You know, these healthy behaviors that developed over time. And I definitely want to touch back on labor and delivery and what could be happening. Especially, I have, you know, we know people that are pregnant, right, at this time, and the I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to start doing home births. All right. I'm like, okay, not and so, but that whole concept of nothing's better than breastfeeding. That's oxytocin for the mom. It is total immune boost for the children. And there's even been some studies looking at cases with coronavirus that we would not inhibit them from breastfeeding, whether the mom had coronavirus or not, because it's better overall for their immune system. So I hope that that's being practiced, and I'm not 100% sure, but separation at birth is one of the worst things that we can do to any family member, both the mother and the child. Having connection, touch, critical for, you know, healthy oxytocin receptor development for the rest of our life. So the more touch, connection, love that we feel in our early formative years will help us through transitions throughout our life. And that is really powerful. I think that we're going to see more and more studies as we study what's happening in our populations right now, but more and more studies about that, because that is the oxytocin connection. Wow. And we go into consideration of even one of the areas of interest for me is certainly Asperger's and autism spectrum, because it's oxytocin deficiency. Wow. Oxytocin insufficiency. They can't make eye contact. They don't feel joy. They're not huggable, right? They have oxytocin insufficiency. And what plays in? Multiple factors for sure play in. But one of them may be high dose Pitocin in labor. And there are some studies looking at that.
You've got to
Can you believe that? Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
and you think, okay, it's crazy. It's safe, but is it? Because we see this high dose Pitocin, and then it can affect, because Pitocin is oxytocin.
It like probably blocks your natural production, right?
Well, or it does something to the receptor sites. It's
to possible. The receptor sites, right?
And then if you add that in with a C-section birth, because sometimes it's high dose PIT, C-section birth, and without the natural inoculation and the higher stress of that situation, that can affect the receptors. So early intervention may be just that, you know, the tight wrap blankets, you know, breastfeeding, and we have to see from there. But it's very interesting. It really makes me think, because we were talking about earlier, like, oh yeah, I mean, we feel very comfortable and safe with Pitocin, but when I thought about it and learned that autism had a oxytocin deficiency, because I used oxytocin therapeutically in some clients as well that were on spectrum, and saw an immediate positive reaction, which is so eye-opening. Now it's an area of investigation, but it does certainly, you know, give us pause to think, and touches my heart to think, okay, well, you know, what can we do differently around labor and delivery, and certainly separating mom from baby early on.
Oh, that's
no bueno.
I actually experienced that with Dean. So I only had postpartum depression with my second one. And that's so interesting. That was the one difference, was we were separated. And that's because he spiked a little fever right away. So you know how in the hospital settings, they just immediately take them. And I mean, I would just cry. It was like one of those things that you can't even control.
You were also very angry too. I mean, we were not happy.
Well, yeah, because we're right. But not even that. It's just not natural, I don't think. So like, I remember having to like walk over there and feed him, but it's not the same as having him there in the room. And yeah, that must have triggered like postpartum depression for me. And it's funny you say that, because he, you know, of both of my children, he has sensory processing disorder. He, we don't know if he's on the spectrum. It's one of those things that it takes a while to go through testing and go through these doctors and go through loopholes. if he were to be, it would be very high functioning, but it's just interesting. That's all very interesting to me.
Yeah, very, very, very.
You know, the fact that he was separated for a few days. It was only a few days, thank God. I have friends who, poor things, they had to go home without their baby, which I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges there. And two, with postpartum depression too, because oxytocin is a natural antidepressant, right? And then if you're not able to hug and cuddle, I mean, the whole process of birth, labor and delivery, and postpartum done in a beautiful way is all about that bonding, reestablishing the happy hormones, and, you know, essentially increasing oxytocin, decreasing cortisol and prolactin, a really important hormone for that, just that sense of connection too. Very important there. And so I wonder, you know, really does, there's just, you know, has to be an emerging field of research. So but one thing that I use in my clients with postpartum depression is bioidentical progesterone. Bioidentical progesterone and high dose fish oils, you know, very good high dose fish oils and bioidentical progesterone can really help with that. And then just thinking, you know, doing things that increase oxytocin and, you know, is perfect for all stages of our lives. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Wow. I'll just leave my comment here as the man in this. It's not fun for the father when you have to compete against oxytocin and you have elevated prolactin. It's not, those things both cause physical changes that are not great for the dad. But
this has been happening for centuries.
That's all part of the process. There's a reason why we shouldn't be together for a long time. We shouldn't be intimate, you know, for a while. So
mom's is not right at that point. It's like, it's like natural birth control.
Spacing out natural birth control. It is
part of natural spacing. What prolactin does to
it really does.
Prolactin, it does it. I don't know if it's atrophy or if it's a little bit. It does change things down there.
I think that you would know, but I remember my OBGYN telling me something that I had to do something with estrogen. The breastfeeding would affect my estrogen or something, which is why, you know, sex could be painful or things like that.
I would assume that was the prolactin. Doesn't prolactin make things more tender? Prolactin. That's why breastfeeding mothers, you have to be careful when you're doing an Mirena insertion, for example, because the chances for perforating are higher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it can definitely be because of estrogen and progesterone deficiency at that point. Because too, in pregnancy, we're at these super high levels. And all of a sudden, they're all being washed out, and now your reproductive hormones are being suppressed yet again. They've been, you know, like ovarian suppression. So you're going to have, like, you're not relying on your own natural production as much. And that's where that oxytocin comes in, and like, honey, I'm getting some baby. I'm just getting this love and connection. You're good over there.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, both the baby and the mother are totally ignoring. Like, my first ignored me for the whole first year.
The whole time I breastfed,
the whole time you breastfed.
Of course, that's how it is. It's
I
like
was
they only
nothing.
want to be with mom. Yeah, that is. You get your time.
All right.
That's right.
All right, so let's continue with this, because I love talking about women's health, and, you know, we spoke about this already. Like, I feel like, you know, I was a little misguided in a lot of what I believe to be true. So I'd love for you to clarify some of these subjects. You know, you're a physician, you don't really have any real conflicts of interest. So first, with respect to the hormonal IUD, you know, what are the risks and benefit, and was it a preferred contraceptive of yours in your practice? And if not, what were some other methods that you recommended instead of it? I mean, it's hard nowadays because not everybody's crazy like us, and we have the Daisy, but it seems like compliance is a big issue. So I just kind of love to hear how you balance all of those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's great to talk about the natural ways too. I mean, natural birth control, timing, I mean, that is crazy. OBGYN, I could never do that. So for myself, and I would say, if I can't recommend it for myself, how can I really recommend it for my clients? They have to be so motivated. And so, but the, you know, Paragard IUD is my number one favorite form of birth control. And so we're not interfering with ovulation. The sperm and egg, according to scientific research, looking at studies, that the egg and sperm never meet. So it's an ethical form of birth control, and it is non-hormonal. So the Copper T IUD or the Paragard IUD is one of my favorites. And then as a backup choice, could be, and because it's also completely reversible, which is nice. And it's something I've used in women of all ages. And then the second probably would be the low dose or Mirena or Skylar IUD.
Oh, so yeah, the little one, yeah.
The little one, it has progestin in it. And so thinking about for where I've recommended that is certainly in younger women with dysmenorrhea, painful cycles, and difficulty, with their cycles. The Mirena IUD is another option for birth control, and also help with pelvic cramping, helping their cycles, but always with a multivitamin mineral supplementation, because it's still a progestin, which is going to affect our magnesium, our B vitamins, some of our mineral absorption, and we have to nip that in the bud. But it is probably the next safest, and it is, again, completely reversible. And then with birth control pills for when they're needed for birth control, I still, unless for short periods of time for help with cycle management, it is as a birth control option when other options aren't an option. Mm-hmm. And also for only when it's necessary, because we know post-birth control syndrome is a real thing. And when we are taking oral hormones at these levels, they affect our other hormones in our body and the hormonal communication system. We talk about the HPA-G axis, right? And also affecting our thyroid. So these higher levels of birth control pills, we know, can increase our risk of breast cancer, can increase our risk for thyroid disease, and, amongst other things. So that's probably only when needed for birth control, when other methods fail. And, that's something, to consider as well.
When you're saying that, I just think it makes me think of like my mom, because that's like the generation. My mom, she's okay. If I'm 35, she's 55. So I feel like that generation was kind of like the guinea pigs for the whole birth control
thing.
Well,
they had 150 milligram or microgram.
And they had really high
pills.
Dose.
Yeah.
But like, but even just that, you're sitting here saying, for the short term, and then I think of my mom, who was probably on the pill since she was 17 years old, like for her whole entire, like, nonstop. And I know you've probably had patients like this. I know several women like this. I was on it for years straight. So it's just so crazy that, like, that can't be good. How can that, how does that affect us?
Well, and we weren't aware. So I'm in your mom's age group. I'll be 54 this year.
Yeah, you guys are like the guinea pigs.
With a 12-year-old, right? I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
Gotta stay healthy.
Gotta stay healthy.
Gotta stay healthy. Hormones that's why and 4 daughters in the house. So
wow, all the girls.
I'm an expert just based on that.
Man.
So, but it's so true. Birth control pills for acne, birth control pills for regular cycles, but honestly, over the years of my practicing medicine now for 3 decades, practically 3 decades almost. And seeing girls come in, in their preteens, because they've started their period, being put on birth control pills. Right. We know that is dangerous. We know that is not an answer for anything. And it is harmful, and really with very rare exception. And so it's not an answer. And that's the problem right now is that we still see women young girls being put on birth control pills. And then also those women in the menopause. I had a very well-known, did a podcast with a fabulous neuroscientist who, for her menopausal symptoms, that's her treatment of choice is birth control. I'm not to argue with anyone's treatment of choice. For doesn't need it for birth control, is for the hormonal hot flash management.
Right.
Like it's not a reason.
She wanted more hormones. Is that why she just wanted to crush it? Because that's a much higher dose than a menopause dose.
Right, exactly. Because that was what her and her doctor decided on, not based on her doctor's recommendation. It's not her field of expertise. So she went with her doctor's recommendation. For myself, I was like, well, this is what I would do. But she's like, honestly, you have a relationship with your doctor, and you want to follow what their best recommendation is for you, for sure. But without adequate consent, I don't agree. I don't agree. Right. At least say these are your risks for the birth control, right, and really understand your options otherwise. Like, we're putting you on birth control, not for birth control, for hormone swing management. We're putting on your pregnancy dose hormones with a synthetic progestin that we know has cardiovascular consequences, can actually increase your risk of breast cancer. Wow. Or we could use a bioidentical regimen that is more physiologic, and you can cycle with your cycles, which would be my approach, as well as follow, this keto green plan, the supplemental detoxification program. And let's eliminate those hot flashes altogether. Like, I'm 54. I probably had a handful of hot flashes, and I can tell you what I did to get them.
Right. Awesome. Exactly. I love that. I love that you said that. It's so true. We got to take lifestyle into account, other things, before we just start throwing birth control at people. So, well, this kind of is a great segue because, speaking of the hormones, you've said that it takes more than hormones to fix your hormones. So can you explain that for our listeners, and also, mention maybe some situations in which it may be a good idea to take hormones, and then where maybe you wouldn't, and, different options at.
Yeah, I am an advocate of bioidentical hormones when they're needed, at starting at low physiologic doses and transdermal doses even. And, but I always say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones, because our hormones can be dialed in and we're going to have problems. For example, thyroid hormones. If everyone, if that's all it took to create weight loss, everyone on thyroid hormones would be
skinny.
Thin, right? They would be. But so it's not true. It's not the case, right? There's so much more. There's an intricate network of communication between our hormones. So over 150 circulating hormones in our body, metabolites, there's many different forms of estrogen are circulating. Some are healthy and some are not healthy. For the most part, estrogen's healthy for us, right? Most part, that is a good hormone. It gets some bad press, which I'm not going to get into the misogyny of some of the anti-estrogen talk, but it does get some bad press. But in general, it's the estrogen, good estrogen is very supportive. But how our body detoxifies estrogen because of gut issues, detoxification issues, other toxins and endocrine disruptors and estrogen mimickers that are toxins in our air, water, plastic bottles, chemicals, etc. All of that affect our natural hormones, and that creates toxic estrogens, not our natural production. It's not natural for us to create
xenoestrogens are the ones that our body just don't really know what to do.
It's so true. And it's stuff we're using every single
day. Well, the glyphosate too. And it's everything.
It's everything.
Right. I just read an interesting article by one of our favorite bloggers. We've been following her for over a decade, on unfortunately the prevalence of glyphosate in collagen products, that a lot of them seem to be high in glyphosate.
Interesting.
And that
I guess it depends where they're sourcing it. Because if the cows are grazing on glyphosate sprayed
we know it comes out in the milk, it might as well it's probably going to come out in so
interesting.
I think we're probably going to eventually, hopefully, see kind of like a label, like glyphosate free label. That would be a good one to have, because that would be, we know, like these xenoestrogens and all of these things, the phthalates, the parabens, all these things, they can cause epigenetic marks that are permanent, and they can go for generations. In other words, it would be without contact with any other person. Like, let's say you were by yourself, and your kids would, for 4 generations, according to a study done with fish, have those marks. So those marks are permanent now. So now that mark, that mutation is the gene that all the people have. So this is super important. And I will say, another thing, I'm not against estrogen. We have a friend, Jay Campbell, we just had him on the podcast, and he's has a crusade against anti-estrogens. He's big on testosterone, therapy for men. And he has a lot of doctors that they've linked a lot of health issues with these low estrogen levels. Like, even men need to have estrogen. So, that's important for people to know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember Jay. Him and his wife took my CPR program way back when.
Oh,
yeah. I loved it. He's one of the testimonials. I love Jay.
Oh, good. He's a madman. We love him.
He's great. He's hysterical.
So good. And again, advocate for sexual health and longevity in marriages and fixing all that. He's really great. So, a lot to say here, and almost like back to the comment of like how we have to list things as organic. I want to put or glyphosate free. I want to put the burden on the glyphosate contains glyphosate. That should be labeled like the products that contain glyphosate, right, or they're non-organic. That should be labeled. Why putting it on the pure? It's just
it's so true. They always put it on the burden, right?
You gotta pay.
You have to pay extra.
Yeah. That's so much better.
That's so true.
Never thought of it that way.
That like switch role of ethics.
Yeah. I think that would help.
That's so true. That would definitely help. But of course, how horrible would it look? Like you go to the grocery store, like 90% of the stuff is sprayed with glyphosate.
Exactly. It's eye-opening, though.
It is eye-opening, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of money and a lot of lobbying that would never let that happen. Yeah. I mean, it's hard the way the situation is. It makes you feel dirty.
And that's why what you guys are doing is so powerful, because you're informing the consumer, and we make choices with our dollar. Yeah, we make choices every day when we go to the store. What are we choosing? And then how do we vote? And that's where it's really important that we stand up and we use our voice. And absolutely. Who said the quote, evil will happen when good people do not stand up and take action?
It's so true. Yeah, it's very true. Of course, we have to stand up, and I do. I'm a big believer in voting with my dollar. I even annoy my kids about it, but it's like good for them to learn as well. Like if they want to buy, I spend we have our budget for groceries for certain foods. They are more than welcome to earn their own money and buy themselves candy and whatever it is that they want. But I have told them that I have made a personal decision, mainly an ethical one, because I don't find those companies to be ethical putting that stuff in children's food, and so I choose not to buy it. And they're like, okay, so it's like trying to show them too that they do have that power, and it works. It absolutely
9 times out of 10 they don't buy it.
Well, it's not that. Yeah, but I'm saying like the voting with our dollar and the demand, it works. It really works. We've seen that. We started the paleo diet 10 years ago, and there was no products for us. Nothing. Yeah. There was no crackers, nothing that we could eat. Nothing. Now there's all these brands with all these foods. So
a lot of crappy ones too, but
hey,
there's good ones.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Just picking and choosing. I love that. Voting with our dollar. That just makes so much sense. And empowering your kids. Okay, so I have to admit to something here, because we're talking as parents. and I'm a single mom here working with my kids, but this is where I run into dilemma on voting with my dollar. It's like when I have all the kids over, party, the school class party. And I'm like, they just get pizza and stuff usually and candy. I'm like, do I get the organic chicken to make chicken wings, or do I not get the organic chicken?
We talked about
look at the cost difference. Like here's 20 really skinny wings.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah. When we throw parties and stuff, we Costco it, and we're like, all right, we'll get as good as stuff we can get. I'll get like the nice big bag of organic tortilla chips, but you're getting that regular spinach dip with the regular mayo for sure.
Right. I'm barbecuing it, not frying it in peanut oil. We're good.
Yes.
It's good. So true.
Well, it's so funny because we've had like things that, speaking of Lifetime, the gym where she goes like, was it that or it was something else? No, it was birthday party or something. And we were talking about what she's going to bring. And I'm like, these kids aren't getting that. I'm not going to pay for all these kids to get that.
We're not going to pay for all your friends to eat organic grass-fed burgers.
They're not even going to appreciate it or like it anyways,
It's so true. Yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And how do you like it when you have the kids over? And we do this all the time. There's one little boy, he's 9, must be 8 or 9. And so he comes over and he's like I served burgers for everyone. And my kids are like, oh, this is great. Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, where's the bun? I'm You're like, my daughter's like, sorry, no, we don't eat buns.
We don't do buns.
Yeah, I know. Same over here. Yeah, same over here.
Yeah, they have like the good thing about our oldest, at least, our youngest, I think is the same, is that he has this, I think I give ourselves some credit because we have, we love him, we nurture him, we give him such a strong sense of like, just confidence that he doesn't mind being different, but he's reminded very often between the homeschooling and the way he eats that he's
kids
different.
Are brutal.
Yeah. And kids, we just on our morning walk this morning, we were talking about, on the way back, we were talking about how, I was just asking him, like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And then I just started, I bring up these topics, and then it's amazing because then he starts to bring up topics in the same kind of deep, and so he's like, you know what I don't like? And I'm like, what's that? He's like, friends that pretend to be your friends and then later on they're mean. And he was talking about a neighbor of ours who said that Desmond was gonna grow up to work at McDonald's because he's homeschooled.
Oh yeah.
And then he said, well, first
now
of
he's
all,
homeschooled too.
yeah, that's true.
I can't wait to see that kid. I'm like,
he started naming all these people that were homeschooled,
so
famous
funny.
people, and then he said that that there was someone, he even mentioned, he's so sweet, he has such a sweetheart, that someone at McDonald's saved someone's life. So even if he was at McDonald's, that he would probably be saving people's lives.
Oh my gosh.
So, all right, let's get back on this. Now we're talking about the kids, and we got all googly-eyed over the kids. So let's get back to women.
Yes.
So, we know, we were just talking about these vasomotor symptoms. When a woman begins menopause, hot flashes, it seems to affect a lot of them. And I would just love to get your thoughts on, the ketogenic diet would, to begin with, would it, have you observed, at least in your practice, in patients that were on a ketogenic diet when they were perimenopausal, that maybe the symptoms were less? Or in general, like if a woman starts to experience the symptoms and you give her some lifestyle modifications, how does that affect those vasomotor symptoms? Because like you mentioned yourself, it seems like there is something going on.
Oh my gosh. Seriously, it is miraculous, the changes that we see. And I study, I'm a numbers person. As a scientist and as a physician, I always want to see what is happening. So in my program with my first book, The Hormone Fix, and then now my second book, Keto Green 16, and prior to writing these books, I've been running my programs online to help women breeze through menopause into what I call the second spring. I like that, right? That sounds good. That's a lot better than just menopause.
So great. I know. Yeah.
We get into our second. Yeah. And so, but what some clients would say, you know what, I've had hot flashes for 10 to 15 years, multiple times during the day. I had one woman who had hot flashes every 20 minutes throughout the day. She's just constantly getting hot. Oh my gosh, and within 2 weeks, like an improvement overall, over 50%, and some women completely relieved from hot flashes. It's not just keto, it's the keto green way. So just those concepts for women. So it's that intermittent fasting, making sure we're alkalinizing, hydrating when we get up in the morning to flush through toxins, that healthy keto green fatty break fast that we have when we break fast, so that you're starting the day with an advantage and your blood sugar is stable. And that just shifts those hot flashes. There are multiple reasons for hot flashes. Estrogen insufficiency, but again, the highs and lows of estrogen swinging, we have to look at it more as it relates to glucose swings and cortisol swings, right? So when whether it's stress, whether it's blood sugar, whether it's dietary, getting more insulin sensitive, getting keto green, stop relying on glucose as your primary fuel source for our brain, it completely eliminates hot flashes. And now I've been running with my new book, a Keto 16 challenge group. So in my Keto Green community, they've been following my 16-day plan, which is 16 days, 16-hour intermittent fasting, 16 key food types to make grocery shopping easier, but also that narrowing it down to hormone balancing foods. But what we're already seeing is, just an overall improvement in energy, a decrease in hot flashes, and improvement in symptoms, aches and pains. Now, this is technically this is my perimenopausal menopausal group and postmenopausal group. And we've seen over a 50% reduction symptom scores in just 16 days. There's no pill that I could prescribe that will do that.
Yeah. First of all, a lot of, I started my career as a pharmaceutical rep selling menopause drugs.
Oh, was that the first thing you sold?
Yeah.
What did you sell? Did you sell Premarin Provera? Were you with Wyatt?
No, I didn't. I sold Vagifem for atrophic vaginitis, the pill that seemed to be pretty good. It was literally you just put it in there.
Oh no, Danny. No.
See, there you go.
This is Myjolva. Have you heard of Myjolva?
No, is it non-hormonal?
It has DHEA in it.
No,
that's it.
Way.
DHEA, plant stem cells from the alpine rose, emo oil, coconut oil, and shea butter. So this works better than any Vagifem, Premarin vaginal, any estrogen.
What is it called again?
It's Julva, like joyful vulva.
Oh, Julva. I like
these companies are smart.
Yeah, we'll give you a link for a free trial, a 7-night free trial. And it is because it has the combination, DHEA is a proandrogen, right? And so it helps with the muscularis level, strength. So women, especially athletes, with the accidental leak of urine when you cough or sneeze, the decrease of pleasure, decrease of orgasm. I mean, I had 4 babies, so I was struggling in my late 30s, early 40s. I had to find a natural solution that didn't have chemicals, toxin, endocrine disruptors in it, and that actually did more than estrogens only work on the mucosal layer.
Right.
DHEA and testosterone work on all 3 layers of the vaginal floor. So you get the muscle back, the rugation back, the natural secretions with pelvic floor exercises always, which we have to do till we die.
Right.
Great Kegel exercises. That just, it just shifts. And the testimonials, I have over 1,000 testimonials on my website that just will bring you to tears, because whether they're in their 30s, and Mirena is a big culprit for vaginal dryness too.
Yeah.
But also I have women in their 70s, and they'd it's been, it's great stories. I'm like, people do tell me anything.
That's so good.
They tell me
it's so great though, because it's true. It's like one of those things that it's like you feel helpless.
Well, also think about
but there's an answer. It really does make a difference. And just from, I would say, clitoris to anus, prime real estate. Seriously, that is an important area of our body.
Yeah,
it is. And what I was going to say with the drugs versus these lifestyle, and even that, especially for postmenopausal, but is that these drugs, the results in vasomotor symptoms is maybe 20%. I don't remember, but it wasn't great. And then you have to the main problem, what is it? The bleeding, because now you have an estrogen, and now this woman who was now menopausal, or there was no periods at all, now she's bleeding again, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So it's like you add this thing to fix what you thought you were going to fix, and you don't really fix it, but you get this bonus problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And then that's the whole balance. And women too, in the menopause, I always start with bioidentical progesterone first, because that's the hormone that sharply declines, and it's a precursor hormone. So as long as we're not shunning in a constant cortisol state, because again, progesterone will shift to cortisol, we can use progesterone. It helps us get a better night's sleep, relax, and it's neuroprotective. Progesterone is neuroprotective. It helps with our memory and brain fog, and whether we have a uterus or not. And this is a really big thing, because we're told in gynecology, well, once you've done a hysterectomy, they only need estrogen, because the progesterone or progestins is only to protect against endometrial cancer from unopposed estrogen. Well, not true. There are progesterone receptors all over our body, in our brain, in our fascia. So that stiffness, the aches, that women complain about and get this, this stiffness, it's a lack of progesterone and estrogen. So when we use these bioidentical hormones back, we have increased flexibility, increased, coordination, increased strength, definitely better night's sleep. And all of that adds up to resilience. Wow. Whether we have a uterus or not. I just think it's just so important. And I created a progesterone pregnenolone combination that's all natural with some essential oils in it, and some plant and some tripeptide 29. So using peptide technology, but to add those precursor hormones for us when we get older. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I got to tell my mom, because she did have hysterectomy. So, and I don't know.
This is what she'll say. After women have had hysterectomy and they've been only on estrogen, once I add back progesterone, without exception, they say, Dr. Anna, I feel like a cloud has lifted. I have my brain back. I just, feel
my mom has crazy brain fog. She's had issues.
And really the progesterone doesn't have the same side effect profile as these progestins that are linked to, is it? Heart issues, right? It's heart issues with the progestins.
Exactly. And the reason is progestins are patentable, right? And the delivery systems are what's patentable, and the synthetic progestins. Bioidentical progesterone is not patentable. Only the delivery system could be. So hence Prometrium, fabulous product, but it is peanut oil based. But a bioidentical progesterone that came out is something I used in my patients, oral progesterone to get a good night's sleep at bedtime, or switch to a bioidentical compounded formula. But bioidentical progesterone does not increase our risk of breast cancer. Now we have 100,000 person studies by Dr. Fournier done in France over the last 2 decades have looked at this key factor. What type of progesterone versus progestin makes a difference, and if it's oral or transdermal. And whether it's oral or transdermal for progesterone bioidentical, there is no increased risk of breast cancer. But when it is synthetic, a norpregnane, pregnane, whatever, progesterone derivative, synthetic progestin, it has a significantly increased risk of breast cancer, especially in oral forms.
Of oral, right? Oral. Yeah, the transdermal's less, but there is still probably an increase.
Yeah.
All these things just continue to just help me understand that, like, it really isn't everybody who doesn't know this, your colleagues, people that I used to work with, they think that they're doing the right thing, and it's just a perception issue. There's like, they're not looking at it the right way. We need to change this. I hope it does change, but it really is, this weird view where we're not looking at things the right way, and we need to turn a little bit and look at them differently. Yeah. And then people will be like, it doesn't matter, because look, I was telling you about the bleeding with the estrogens, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking of, other side effects. So it's just managing symptoms, treating symptoms and managing symptoms and side effects. And there's nothing else. There's no deeper, broader understanding of interaction between different systems and all those things. And I think, not everybody can do integrative medicine, but I think that's what makes you so outstanding. It makes you unique in that you're doing a more holistic approach. Yeah.
Well, you know how they say our mess becomes our message.
Yeah.
My own personal journey. And as a gynecologist, I'm a trained surgeon at one of the best institutions in our country. But when I learned this for myself, when I reversed my infertility and early menopause at age 39 to go on and have a baby naturally at age 41, I was told I would never be able to have, to go through the journey I've been through. When I started implementing what I learned from my journey and traveling and self-discovery and research, I went from doing 2 to 3 surgeries per week to recommending 2 to 3 major surgeries per year.
Yes.
Wow.
Per year. I remember you saying that in your speech.
That's amazing for a gynecologist, because gynecologists do a lot of procedures. A lot of people who are trying to figure out what they're going to do, they like GYN because of the amount of time they can
operating.
A wide range. And the goal is we get quick results for our patients. But if we empower our patients to heal their body, that makes a huge difference. Even something like cervical dysplasia, for instance, like abnormal pap smears. So as I started understanding research and nutraceuticals, more nutrition, like for example, sulforaphane, glucosinolate from broccoli seed extract or broccoli seeds and cauliflower, the cruciferous vegetables. I looked at that research and methylated folate. And so I started using it in my HPV clients with human papillomavirus, whether they had warts or whether they had dysplasia. And I would do that before I set them up for their LEAP procedure. If I had confirmed colposcopy, I'd put them on this cycle and they'd come back for follow-up and nothing. Wow. Everything, their body had completely healed it again. I'd been doing this for over a decade and it was always, the same result. Okay, this confirms our colposcopic findings. And then I would do my procedures and they would have nothing there. So then I went from diagnosis at pap smear before they come in for a colposcopy. Here, start this methylated, folate, methylfolate, and start this. I use Oncoplex from Zymogen. It's a SGS formula. And, start this, take 2 a day, and then I'll do the colposcopy. Colposcopy, nothing. So
is it oxidative stress? Because sulforaphane would be like an antioxidant. What's happening? Yep. Is that what's causing like this
viral load, the
hyperplasia or whatever?
It's like
it's a viral load.
With human papillomavirus, there's a viral and inflammatory. And so the other thing too, we know that women on birth control pill are at higher risk for this, for abnormal PAPs and dysplasia. And so we have to look at that too. But in general, I think because of the antiviral, you're improving your immune system through the antioxidant protection.
Very cool.
Wow. Yeah. This is also amazing stuff.
The body's amazing. It's amazing.
I know.
The ability to heal is amazing.
It's seriously incredible. It really is. We love this stuff. And, I know you talk a lot about the importance of testing versus guessing, when it comes to our health. What are some things all of us should be testing regularly? I know urine pH is huge for you. And are there any specific recommendations for women? I actually haven't done that, so I'm more interested to hear about that too, because
oh yeah. I think urine pH testing is another vital sign. Okay. It absolutely is. It is so important. It's as important as knowing our weight, our blood pressure, our pulse, our temperature. It is that important. And it's almost like a thermometer telling us how well we're doing, as far as our body. The more acidic our urine pH is, the more, metabolic issues we're going to have, because our body needs a healthy balanced pH. And this is where we get into like the alkaline myth and some controversy with some big influencers. And I love controversy. So I talk about when you have, when we want to look at our blood pH versus, what our urine pH is saying, or cellular pH. Our blood pH, we're going to put a needle in the radial artery and draw out arterial blood gas. And that's got to be alkaline, 7.4 plus or minus, very tight control, at a little bit high, a little bit low, and we are super sick. And typically we see a metabolic acidosis. And like, for example, diabetic ketoacidosis has nothing to do with the keto diet, but it's a ketoacidosis. And what we see is that, what we do for them right away, we're putting bicarb, an alkalinizer, into their bloodstream to snap them out of it, right? Wow. To resuscitate them. And that's because of extreme conditions. Extreme starvation, extreme malnutrition will certainly cause a shift in our blood gas, our blood pH. We know that cancer, things like that will create more of an acidosis for so many people. But on a daily basis, what happens? What do we know based on science? We know that the urine pH, the more alkaline the urine pH is, over 7, 7.5, 8, anything over 7, we want to average over 7 on our urine pH, because research shows that clients who do have less osteoporosis, have less inflammatory disorders, including cancer, diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, and the list goes on. So that in and of itself is huge. And this is what I've done now for started bringing my programs online in 2015 for Magic Menopause and making women test. I'm always like, the first 2 weeks, you're going to hate checking your urine pH and ketones, but check. And I promise you, by the end of the second week, you're going to be like, oh my God, I love this. Look what I've discovered about myself.
That's so cool. What I love.
So how often?
Cool. Testing.
Yeah, no, it depends. The ketone thing, it's honestly, it's 100, it's 1,000% because I'm a baby. I don't like to
oh yeah,
especially when I'm doing it myself. And then what ends up happening to me, doctor, is that, I will literally get a high reading and I'm like, yeah, because I'm so stressed standing here for 30 seconds.
She's like in fight or flight when she's doing her blood sugar.
While I'm doing it because I hate it so much. And I'm like, well, that alone is giving me high blood sugar readings.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, you're going to for blood sugar, have you guys used the Freestyle Libre?
Yeah.
Oh, the Libre. Yeah.
Yes,
I want to try one of those.
I did the Dexcom, for a few weeks.
You did a Libre though, right?
And yeah, the last time I had it for like several weeks was the Libre.
Yeah, I want to try to do a Libre because that's definitely telling as well. I've never done one, so that's only like one time, and then I'm like, okay, I could relax and
you can relax just one, and it doesn't even hurt going.
Yeah,
it doesn't, and you learn so much about everything except food, like. You start like
stress.
One of the first time when I had the Dexcom, like in 2018, I think that was, I noticed that, my blood sugar levels were very, nearly constant. There were blips, when I would eat. And then at the same time I was playing referee, and when my sons were like fighting and I had a crazy blood sugar spike, but then I did literally just a minute of breathing and I brought it back down like from like 120 to like 66.
Wow.
It was crazy just how quickly that went,
For the urine though, do you recommend like certain strips? how do we test? Like, how do we do it?
So I'm going to send you some strips because I'm a simplest. Awesome. I want to make things as simple as possible. So I created awesome. Urine test strips with the ketone pad and the pH pad on the same strip, right?
So it tells you both.
So easy. But also, I mean, anyone can just buy pH paper and just check and see where they're at. And often what happens, and what I do with my groups, I'm like, focus on your alkalinity first. Don't worry about ketosis right now. Let's focus on alkalinity, because we want to open up the detox pathways, get well hydrated, get rid of constipation, start, really improving our micronutrients, over our macronutrients to begin with. And then let's push ketosis, because without question, without fail, as soon as we go into ketosis, we get acidic. So then there's that push and pull, like getting up alkaline urine pH with getting in ketones at the same time. So you guys have to let me know, get both alkaline, get a urine pH of 7 or 8, and get into ketosis at the same time, plus ketones at the same time. And just
obviously the
let
same
me know how
goes
it feels.
For men. It goes for men as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and the unfair part is that men have an easier time getting into ketosis, and
for sure.
In general, an easier time. So of it, oh wow.
Yeah. Wow. But listen, hey, we're dying like crazy with this COVID thing. So the men, like 7 out of 10. Wait, what was it?
Oh yeah, men are dying more.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 of these bad cases are men. I mean, we're riskier. We have more prevalence of all of these diseases,
like heart disease and high blood pressure, things like that.
There's a lot of stuff there. So
and what we did with Keto Green 16 out of North Florida Integrative Medicine with Dr. Angeli Akey and her team, they did virtual group medical visits with my Keto Green 16 plan prior to release. And then as the book was releasing, went down there for another kickoff of the plan. And actually for the first time was able to give them the recipes and the full plan versus just the principles. And then the next day we went into quarantine. So we followed up virtually. So now we had virtual group medical visits, which is awesome. And here's this, and I only wanted menopausal clients or postmenopausal. So there were some husbands that came along for the journey. And what happened in 16 days is pretty amazing. It's really amazing, is that this group of a vulnerable population, right? The over 50-year-old women, average age was 61 years old in this group, average age of 61. And what clients said, they were grateful to have something positive to help them improve their resilience, their strength, and just focusing on themselves during this time. And they had more energy, more focus. And one of the ladies, she's 67, she goes, and I'm taking care of my elderly neighbors, and they're younger than her.
That's great.
I love that. My mom's 67, so I'm gonna get this for her.
You got to get it for her. And so the average age in this age group, because like who studies menopausal women, right? No one. So in this study,
it's a terrible market. There's no money to be made.
No, it's terrible. It's hard. And then, again, women, we find the exceptions. If I eat this standing up, it's not going to affect me. Oh, maybe that's just me.
I know, right? You have to like play.
But what we found.
I've been saying that for years because, 4 years ago or something, I remember being at a conference at a meeting for my company, and they said, and it looks like we're going to be getting that indication for Mirena for menopausal women or for Skyla, for menopausal women for that, for the protection. And I, being the guy who always remembers and nothing was said, I was skeptical to begin with, because I remember when I was starting that the whole market was going down and they gave us unrealistic numbers. And then I came the next year and I said, whatever happened to that new indication? They said, oh, we just decided to go against it. But, there's physical, financial realities that people wouldn't pursue something. And I'm not, at the same time, also, you could, if you got the money, you could pay for anything, you can pay for indications and things like that, and you can talk about it. But there's lots of talk about my old career here. I
love it. But that's true.
You were saying that what were you saying? What they found? What did they
what we found is that, so in this average age of 61-year-old women, honestly, in 16 days, I couldn't believe it. I had them double check the numbers. In 16 days, they lost 9 pounds. I mean, if they had lost 3 pounds, I'd have been thrilled. 9
That's
pounds.
a lot for women.
That's a lot. And certainly there's a diuresis there, thank goodness, right? Because third spacing of fluid is a really big issue. Edema is a really big issue, but still beyond that, they're losing fat. And they lost 1.25 inches at their waist, which again is huge in this population group. That's huge. It is. And we had a gentleman in the study, and his name's Daniel, and he's given his consent for sharing his story. And he's 57 years old, on pre-diabetic, about to start diabetic meds, and on blood pressure medicine. So he called his doctor in the middle of the study and said, I'm just feeling weak. I'm not feeling good. And he went to his doc, and his blood pressure, which is normally like 150/70 on blood pressure meds, was 100/70. So they had to reduce his blood pressure meds. And in 16 days, he lost 30 pounds. Wow. 30 pounds. Huge. And he's feeling great. I mean, he's just doing great. He's on a second round of it right now. And so he just had to reduce his blood pressure meds. And I imagine he'll be off it, and he didn't have to start his blood sugar meds. So that's really good stuff, right?
That is good stuff. I love hearing about that.
And it gave them something positive to do too. So it was like perfect timing.
Yep.
I love this. Well, I want one more question. I feel like we've been talking for a long time. I'm sorry. Are you okay?
I love it. We're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. We have another.
All right. So because I wanted to just touch on this before we finish. Is this this adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysregulation, whatever people feel comfortable calling it? It seems to be controversial.
It's real.
For some reason. Some people dismiss it, but what are your thoughts on it? How do sex hormones play a role in it with women? And what are some of the steps? I mean, you've already mentioned it. You already talked about how important progesterone is. But what are some of the steps that women can take to address it if it is an actual issue?
Yeah, no, it is an absolute issue. Adrenal hypofunction. And it's not like, I don't like the term adrenal fatigue. I agree with that. It's just not a good term, because the adrenals aren't fatigued. They are suppressed. Like they're like the unruly child that is, in timeout. Right. That's it, in suspension, so to speak. So it is suppressed. It is where, this state where now cortisol is suppressed, the adrenal function is suppressed, DHEA gets depleted, and is also drops. DHEA, a very important hormone, right? Precursor to estrogen and testosterone, that's suppressed during this time too. So it is a whole function of our entire axis. And this is what really is beautiful about, the reason I do what I do is because I was in that state, and I call it for me, it's that oxytocin cortisol disconnect state, because cortisol suppressed and then oxytocin suppressed at the same time. Right. And so that hypofunction, we have to do a couple things. We have to reset our circadian rhythm. We have to manage cortisol. We have to increase our coherence, improve our heart rate variability. And these are things that really do make a difference. I mean, I struggled. I always say, my divorce was a physiologic divorce because I didn't feel loved, didn't feel connected. And it was in this burnout state caused by adrenal. There's got to be a better word for it. Anyway, dysfunction, maybe.
Yeah, I've been hearing dysregulation. I like that.
Dysregulation. Yeah, definitely dysregulation. And so part of my journey around the world was in discovering healing foods. So maca is a great adrenal adaptogen, and my Mighty Maca Plus has over 30 superfoods. I'll send you some, and we have some free trials of that too. So I'll send you a link for that. Oh, yes, but with the Mighty Maca superfood combination, it is adrenally a support. And what we've seen is that an improvement of at least 70% to 200% in 2 months of DHEA, increase of 70 to 200% increase in DHEAS in the blood in 2 months with users of Mighty Maca 2 to 3 scoops a day. And so that is huge. That was the only thing that improved my adrenal function, plus resetting. So I always say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. It's because this lifestyle medicine factor is so important, is, resetting your circadian rhythm. And and I did that this week. And one of the fastest ways to reset is to go on a camping trip. And we did hammock camping, tent camping.
Amazing to me.
Yes, it is. It is the quickest way.
Getting out of nature.
Yes. Seeing the sunrise, seeing the sunset, seeing the moon, seeing the stars. I mean, just experiencing that, and as isolated as you can be. and grounding, walking barefoot in nature, jumping in a stream, all of that is so therapeutic and is a great way to reset your circadian rhythm. And as much as I would love a 5-star resort, which happen to be closed right now, going into the forest is a 10-star resort. It really is. And that's how we need to look at it. But that is so healing and therapeutic for our adrenals. So circadian reset, sunrises, sunsets, eliminating blue light to the best of our ability, and doing the meditative practices, everything that can increase oxytocin will restore our adrenals.
Love it.
Love that. And I gotta try that Mighty Maca. I wanted to.
You have it. You bought it.
No, not Mighty Maca.
Oh well, you have it.
I have one that tastes horrible, which is why it's there. Anything that tastes bad to me, it's really hard for me to taste.
I will tell you, that's why Mighty Maca Plus came about. So because when I was in Peru on my healing journey, everyone, if you're sick, they say drink maca. If you're, infertile, drink maca. And then they would
it tastes horrible. So you're like, oh,
it's horrible. Yeah, but they call it the Peruvian Viagra. Have you heard that?
No.
This is totally the Peruvian Viagra. Totally, because, and then I needed to understand why, because exactly, it tasted horrible. And I agree with you. If I have an aversion reaction to something, I can't. So
if it's something I have to do every day. If it's like once in a while, fine, I'll do it. But if it's like a vitamin, it can't taste horrible to me.
No, exactly. And so I started mixing it with other foods. Believe me, like I have 2-year-olds that drink this. I'm telling you, it is good.
Okay, I'll definitely.
It's good. It has some greens in there, but it has turmeric, quercetin, resveratrol, green tea extract. I mean, uña de gata herb, cat's claw herb, which is a potent anti-inflammatory, a potent supporter of the immune response. The best way to say it.
We know about that because I'm a very big oversharer.
Yeah,
I don't have any issues with sharing things with people, probably because of being in the medical stuff for so long. And I just shared with the world how I had my first case of hemorrhoids last, and it was terrible. And I had rectal spasms that made me cry. Yeah. And cat's claw was one of the things that was really helpful with that.
Well, you're going to use my Julva too. So I'm sending you that too. Seriously, I have clients with hemorrhoids. They go away.
That works for that too. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
For everybody, my mom, like me, everybody. That's amazing.
Guys always say, "Can you just repackage it in a different way?" I mean, like,
the Julva.
I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah. Danny doesn't care. He'll be like, "Give me the Julva."
And that's it. That's what I say. Strong men have no issue.
No,
confident men have no issue.
I love that.
But maca is rich in arginine. The root grows in the Andes in Peru, and it's rich in arginine, which increases nitric oxide, which is exactly how Viagra works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, Danny knows about that stuff because he was. Well, we had. You should send her that episode. She would probably love that. The Dr. Justin, what's his name?
Dr. Judson Brandeis. Big urologist up in San Francisco.
What you do for women, he's doing it for men. He's like really dedicated to just helping men.
Yeah. And the Gains Wave, I don't know if you've looked at the Gains Wave.
Yes.
They approached me for months and I was like, what's going on with you? Why are you doing that? Finally went through with it because they wanted to work with me. And I got to tell you, it's the most amazing thing ever. It's absolutely amazing. And he also has a product that, what is it called? I forget what it's called, but it's basically, it has L-arginine. Affirm, yeah. And it's just basically you take it in the morning and you take it at night and it continues to give you that because it's one of those things with the men, it's like the atrophy because there's no blood flow. And then you get atrophy and gosh, like I didn't know that, you know. So you could keep that and everything works great. I mean and all the factors that you would measure as a woman, I know how to measure as a man. Like I need to wake up with an erection every day. I need to do it shouldn't be
there's certain things.
Yeah. I mean it should be a very rare occasion where I don't wake up with an erection.
Yep.
That's a whole other story. But
but I think that's important. Like we talk about, erectile disorder being or erectile dysfunction being an issue with cardiovascular disease. It's huge.
Yes.
And so, and then the same thing's happening to women on a smaller scale, right? Because we can't really see that with the clitoris. We can't really see that with the vulva so much, but women will power through it because we have no solutions and no safe space to talk about it. But we really need to. That was one of the reasons why I created Julva too, was because we need something without a prescription that's safe for women to take.
Absolutely. Wow. This has been incredible. I mean, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing all this amazing information with us. We could be here for hours more talking to you, but we want to be respectful of your time. So if you would just want to share one last thing, if, you know, anything you're currently working on, any upcoming projects that you want to share with us, where people can find out more online and all that good stuff.
Thank you. Well, I've just loved it too. I've enjoyed talking with you. I feel like I'm talking with two old friends, and I can't wait to have some. I was just thinking,
we're gonna come visit.
Have a special keto or like a good substitution for Café Cubano. I went to medical school in Miami, and I'm like,
we're from Miami.
I love how you said Cubano, like you said it with a Portuguese accent. That was good.
Cubano. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but I recognize it. I love it.
And exactly. So it's just thinking of that. So anyway, if we were having a good Café Cubano over, you know, more conversation, that would be fabulous. So to just connect with me at my website, which is dranna.com, like Dranna, DRANNA.com. And if you do /Keto Green, you'll go to my page where you can get my Keto Green 16 book, where all the places it's available to order. And then 7 amazing pre-order bonuses, including my feast recipes, which includes my chocolate avocado mousse. I mean, it's a chocolate mousse that is keto. I mean, it is the best ever. Dairy free, because all my recipes are dairy free and grain free. And it also has a great key lime pie for us from South Florida. We love our key limes.
I love key lime pie.
That she loves.
That's like my one thing. I'm like, ooh, I love a good key
lime
pie.
You will love this, because this is completely keto too. And it's made with a nut crust and avocado and key limes, and really so delicious. Yeah, so good. And so many other good bonuses, but I focus on the feasting, because there's always place for feasting in our lives.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cabeca. And we would love to, at some point, we'll get together.
Well, yeah, if you come down to Anna Maria, definitely hit us up. We go to, you know,
that's
all the beaches. All the beaches here are about an hour from us. So it's like Clearwater, St. Pete, Anna Maria, Siesta. We'll make a little extra 15-minute hike. But
perfect.
Yeah, and we'll definitely let you know if we're gonna head up your way. We love doing road trips. Georgia. Yeah, and
if you've been to Jekyll Island, I mean, St. Simon's Island's just the next town over. So
amazing.
I haven't been. I just seen, and they're both. I mean, it looks beautiful. Jekyll Island's beautiful, and I mean, I would assume that's beautiful as well.
So yeah, it is. It's so amazing. And then there's a little hidden gem on our coast called Little St. Simon's Island. It's actually ecotourism. It's very preserved, and it's rustic, although it's all, you know, very high-end first class, but Little St. Simon's Island. So there's been no change to the ecostructure in thousands of years. Wow, so you really get to see the natural marshes, the natural Indian shell mounds and things like that. It's pretty cool.
I love
That's so cool. We have to make a trip out there.
Yeah. I look forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Cabeca. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, we're going to take a minute right now to tell you about one of our amazing sponsors, Santa Cruz Medicinals. Santa Cruz Medicinals is a company that we've been using for years now. They make high potency, high quality, lab tested CBD formulas at an affordable price. They offer ketogenic, paleo, gluten-free, sugar-free, lab tested formulas.
You all may remember when we did our cannabis series last year. One of the things we learned with CBD is that the research is pretty clear on dosage. 5 to 20 grams per kilogram is what you should be taking per day. And most of the quote-unquote CBD you see online and on Amazon is severely underdosed. Most of these products are offering dosages that are so low, you'd have to down a bottle a day. That's why we love Santa Cruz Medicinals, because they offer highly dosed, potent CBD with clean ingredients, and they have several cool products, but we want to share our favorites with you. So what are your favorites, my love?
All of them? No, really. I have yet to try a product from them that I don't love. However, I will talk about some of my ride or die products. So during my cycle, I get horrible migraines, guys. And my go-to is definitely their peppermint tincture or the 10,000 milligrams to get a potent anti-inflammatory dose. Peppermint has been shown in studies to relieve migraine pain. But let's talk about the pain salve real quick, because this I use for almost everything. And everyone in this household agrees we cannot live without it. So the CBD pain salve, it has clean ingredients that you can trust, but it also has peppermint, which really, really helps. And so what I like to do is I'll rub some on my temples, and it really provides instant relief for me when I have bad headaches. But of course, I'll use it as well for any muscle pain that I have.
Well, I'm personally a huge fan of the 10,000 milligram bottles of CBD in MCT oil. I put it in my coffee, and then again at night, I'll put some more in, like some broth or whatever drink I'm drinking, a hot tea. to get an adequate dose for the day. I also love the pain salve, especially when I'm extra sore. We usually take turns massaging it onto each other, and it always does the job. You guys also have to try the new CBD infused hemp and collagen protein. If you're a fan of horchata, you will love this one.
Oh, that one is so good, guys. We just tried it and it is so good. So yeah, if you're interested, check them out. You can find them at scmedicinals.com. And of course, don't forget to use the code FATFueledMom at checkout to save 15% on your order and get free shipping, guys.